Okay, good morning. We're holding Daf Tez Zayin Amud Aleph, 3 lines
Good
from the
morning,
bottom of
Rebbe.
the page. And the words are V'chamas HaMelech Shachacha. So this is when in the story Esther had pointed to Haman as being the wicked person that had tried to annihilate her and her people. And that's when Haman went out into the garden and he found people uprooting his trees. He asked them, who told you to do this? And they said it was Haman. And he comes back in and he finds Haman falling on Esther. And he's fuming. And he says, are you trying to conquer my wife with me in the house? And that's when Kavarna says that there's a tree hanging, waiting for, that Mordechai built for, that Haman built for Mordechai. And the king says that he should be hung on it. And then it says that the king's anger abated. So it says the Gemara, why do we have these two abatements mentioned? Because if you want to say that the king's anger abated, you could have just said why shachacha, which sounds like it's two abasements. So the Gemara explains, Achas shel malki shel elam. One was the anger of the king of the universe, Hashem, that Hashem was angry with Haman. The Achas shel Achashverosh. And the second one was the anger of Achashverosh. Okay. The Amrila, others interpret it and say that no, there's two over here, and they're both of Achashverosh. Achas shel Esther. One was he was angry on account of what Haman sought to do to Esther. The Achas shel Vashti, and one was on account of what Haman wanted to do with Vashti, as we said previously, that when Esther...
Rabbi, Ezra's trying to say something.
Yes.
Yeah. Hamat is singular. So I don't understand how they can come up with, and shachacha could be the verb form for a feminine, which hamat is. So how can they come up and say this represents two?
So it's similar to the drasha that the Gemara says with regards to V'ahavta es Hashem lekecha, you should love Hashem your God b'chol levavcha, with all your heart. So now levavcha could be written with one base, which would be libcha, your heart. Levavcha, when you write it with two bases, implies that there's more than one heart. And so we say that this means that you should love Hashem with your two inclinations, your good inclination and your evil inclination, right? With both of them, you should love Hashem. The same principle is being used over here, that because there are two chafs, two letter chafs, instead of it just saying V'chamas HaMelech Shacha, that it calmed down, right? It says Shachacha, two bases, which implies that there's two things going on. So it's from that extra letter in the word Shachacha that the rabbis imply that there's something more being alluded to in the verse.
I don't buy it. Sorry, Rabbi.
Okay.
I don't buy it.
Okay.
Just from the grammatical point, you could say shacha is the female form, and that goes with hamat hamele shacha. Okay, but beyond that, nobody would say hamat melech shachach.
No, the point here is that by adding an extra chaf, it's not so much that you're making it plural, but it's making it sound
not making it plural. It's a feminine form of the verb.
Right.
What's the verb in the male form?
Shachach.
Shachach.
Yeah.
But shachacha is like easing, or it's
shachach like forgotten.
No,
that's with a chet at the end. This is a chaf.
So is the thing. It seems like because it could be written in a form where it only has one letter chaf, the Gemara is assuming that there's an additional message that is telling us that it's a bit of a double expression to have it with two chafs. So what is the second expression for? That's the way the Marshal explains it. That because there's a second chaf, it seems like it's a double expression of abated. And the question is, what does it allude to? And so the Gemara says that it's alluding to, remember, that everything that we're doing over here with the psukim is we are deriving things from anomalies in the text. When you see that it's written in a certain way and it could have been written in a different way, so we're saying the fact that with Ruach HaKodesh it was written in a certain way is to give us insight to things that don't jump out at us from the plain text, from the plain meaning of the verse. And that's why the Gemara is saying the word shachacha is written in this form to teach us that there was a second thing, like calming down that took place. And so we had before in the Gemara told us that when Esther says, right, that that this person Haman, right, doesn't care about the damage caused to the king, so he said that the Gemara says that the thing she was claiming that Haman didn't care about was the death of Vashti, and now her own death. And so here the Gemara is coming along, following off that idea and saying that when there was this shechacha, it was corresponding to those two things that Esther had spoken about. One, that what Haman tried to do to Esther, and the second, what Haman had done to Vashti, he had her killed. He instigated her being killed. Okay. I can try and look into the grammatical point that you're making and see if I can find anything. Yes.
Chamato or chamata comes from chama. Chama is the anger.
Right.
Chama is not for men. Chama is for both, for men and women.
But the point is about not so much about the
Chama is actually in the form of female.
Okay, but the point here isn't so much about
Chama is anger.
Right, but it's the point here wasn't on the Hamas. The point was on the
Chamato is from the Chama.
Right,
but that's what I was questioning. Why shachacha is which is
because for Chama you always say shachacha.
All right. Anyway, I will look.
Okay. I mean, that was the question that I had. All right. And so the rabbi said he's going to look into it. Okay. Fine.
Okay. So now,
Rabbi,
yes.
Rabbi, I had a question also. This concept that a person could do tshuva in one instant, in one moment, would we say that that's applying to Charvona?
No, I don't think so. And
what did he have to do tshuva for?
Well, tshuva because he was part of the council to hang Mordechai.
Charvona was?
Carvona, yeah, the Gemara says, we just said it yesterday. Yesterday, the Gemara had said that Carvona abandoned Haman, right? Because initially he was part of the Eitzah to hang Mordechai. He saw it wasn't going in Haman's favor.
He switched. It wasn't going his way, so he switched.
That's right. He abandoned ship. But it doesn't seem that he did any tshuva over there. It just seems like he was trying to save his own skin.
But we say that he's remembered for good. It sounds like he did.
He's remembered for good because it's a lesson. I think this is a very important lesson that when a person wants to do a good deed, but he has ulterior motives, nevertheless, we still attribute the good deed to the person, right? Which means to say that a human being is made up of good impulses and bad impulses, a desire to do good and a desire to do bad. And both of them are true simultaneously. I'll tell you a beautiful vart I heard on this week's Parsha. You can use this if you want, and it talks to this point. In the beginning of this week's Parsha, it says Shlach lecho anoshim, right? And then it says Kulam anoshim, right? And Rashi says at that time they were kosher, they were good people. These people were kosher. These were leaders of the Jewish people, and they were handpicked by Moshe with because of their righteousness, because they were good. Later on in Sheni, in the second portion, right, that we read in this week's Parsha, it says Vayelchu vayavoyu, right? So Rashi comments, why does it say they went and they came? We already know that they went, right? We know that Moshe sent them. Why do you need to tell me again? Vayelchu, they went, and they returned, right? So Rashi says that we equate their going with their coming, just like their coming was with an Eitzara, with a bad intention, right, with a bad counsel. So too their going was with a bad counsel. So the question is obvious. It seems to be a stira in Rashi. There's a contradiction in Rashi. Rashi, in the beginning of the Parsha, says at that time they were good, they were ksherim, right? And right a few psukim later, it seems that when they came back, he tells us that just like they came back with a bad eitzah, they left with a bad eitzah. So which one is it? So the explanation I heard from Rabbi Yossi Chazan, he says, I don't remember who he quoted it from, but he said that what it means is like this: the contradiction is not in Rashi. The contradiction is in man. The contradiction is in the human being. A human being can simultaneously reach the highest heights and in the very same moment plummet the deepest depth of evil, which means to say that we have layers and layers and layers. And it could be that in one moment we could have altruistic feelings and motives, and somewhere deep down, there's an ulterior motive that we're not even aware of. We're not even consciously aware of. So what Rashi's telling us is that although when they left with the right intentions, with the right thoughts, with the right kavanah to fulfill it, but nevertheless, when they came back, what is revealed to us is that deep down, lurking there, somewhere deep down, and maybe even in their subconscious, there was already this notion that they didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael, and that's something that affected their behavior. So likewise over here, in the reverse, I'm saying it in the negative, but we can say it in the positive too, that although Charvoila may have only been doing it to save his skin, but nevertheless, there is some good in every person. Every person wants to do the right thing. So where we mention Charvoila for the good, why? Because in the end, he did a good deed. And because he did a good deed, even if he had ulterior motives, we remember the good that he did. Anyway, so that's
Rabbi,
yes.
can I say something? If you put more than one word together in Hebrew, usually it has more than one meaning.
Okay.
When you say vayelechu vayabohu, it's not that they went and came back. It's they went and they got to that point.
No.
That's one of the meanings. Vayelechu means they went and they came to Jerusalem, or they came to Tel Aviv.
No, you have to see the pasuk in context, and you'll see it in context. It's talking about their return.
Okay, so maybe in this case it is. I'm just saying that it can have another explanation, another meaning in another sentence.
Rabbi,
Rabbi
Manis Friedman talks about what's going on here, about the different levels of the neshama, of the soul, that there's the good, there's the good neshama and there the animal neshama, and then there's another level of the neshama. So what you're saying that there's good in every person, that this is something that he covers, in detail, in one of his shiurim, his YouTubes,
I have a friend. His name is Rabbi Yisrael Blumenthal. He lives in Lakewood, and he once shared with me a very profound teaching. He said that when it says that every person is created in the image of God, what does it mean? That Hashem created every human being in his image. Remember, that's not just Jewish people are created in the image of Hashem. This is talking about, already in Parshas Noach, it says that everybody's created in the image of Hashem, right? So what's this referring to? So he said, it's the sensitivity to truth. Every person has a sensitivity to truth. And because of that, right? And because of that, there's always an element within a person, even in wicked people, where they come to a point where they recognize what the right thing is to do and what the wrong thing is. And he goes on to explain, if we're already talking, I'll just share the end of his thought. He said like this. He said when the ger came to Hillel, and he said to Hillel, teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing on one foot. So Hillel said to him, what you don't like done to you, don't do to anybody else. What you don't want done to you, what you hate being done to you, don't do to anybody else. So he asks, so why does Hillel formulate it in that way? Why don't you just say, don't be mean to somebody else or whatever? Why does it say what you don't like done to you? So he says, based on this idea that everybody's created with a sensitivity to truth, he says that a person's greatest sensitivity to truth is when it's happening to them. When something is happening to you, that's all of a sudden when you feel that this is wrong. When you feel that it's wrong. I gave an interesting example. He said that when the generals of Hitler, right? When the generals of Hitler were asked by Hitler, how are they doing? They lied to him. And they told him false information, trying to make it sound like they were doing better than they were. And Hitler was enraged and he screamed at them, why are you lying to me? So here you have a guy, right, who epitomized lying, right? He said that's how you're supposed to do. You say a lie enough times, it's going to be believed. He advocated lying, but when it was happening to him, then all of a sudden it's like, how can you lie to me? It's a terrible thing to lie to me, right? Anyway, but the point here is that we're all created with a sensitivity to truth. Every human being has that. And therefore, it is possible that although a person has ulterior motives when they do something good, but there's also a part of them that has this sensitivity and this altruism where they do want to do the right thing. All right.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
I forget the exact phrase, but you were talking about the idea that something that person could be on the highest level and then at the same time on the lowest level.
Yeah.
So I saw something, and I think the source was, I'm sure you've seen it, the pamphlets that came out from Kahas as to why a person wears a yarmulke. These short little pamphlets.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, and I think most of this idea was from the Frierdiker Rebbe, from the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Right.
And he says there that one of the reasons we wear a yarmulke is because we're embarrassed because the brain, the mind, could take a person to the highest heights, and at the exact same time, it has the potential to drag a person to the deepest depths. And because of embarrassment over that situation, we wear a yarmulke over our heads.
Wow, I've never heard that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's go a little bit further in the Gemara. It says the Gemara as follows. Now that we've mentioned the turn of events and how Haman was hung, and now all of a sudden Mordechai was raised to be even more prominent than he was before. So now the Gemara mentions a verse in Bereshis, which is going to teach us a little bit about, or allude to at least, the greatness that was bestowed upon Mordechai. So it says in the Pasuk, with regards to the story with Yosef and his brothers, it says, L'kulam nasan leish chalifos smolos, that to each of them, Yosef gave changes of clothing, and to Binyamin nasan, he gave a whole bunch of things, and then he gave chamesh chalifos, five changes of clothing. So now the question is, why would somebody like Yosef, who suffered because of jealousy, right? So why would he make the same mistake and cause jealousy between the brothers and Binyamin? So that's what the Gemara asks. Is it possible that the very thing that this righteous man Yosef suffered, that he himself did now stumble over the same thing? Because of the two sellers' weight of fine woolen garment that Yaakov gave to Yosef more than to the other brothers. This Galgal Hadava, the matter evolved until Yosef and was sold by his brothers, and then that led to us and our forefathers descending into Mitzrayim. So therefore, if this favoritism that Yaakov did led to the whole exile of Mitzrayim, why would Yosef make the very same mistake which he suffered from? Binyamin Bar Yefes says, Rebez Rabaz Lohi. It's really Yosef, when he gave these things to Binyamin, he was trying to allude to him, that in the future he's going to have a son, a descendant, meaning Mordechai, who would come from him, that's going to come out from in front of the king, with 5 royal garments. Geneva, like it says, Mordechai Yotza, and Mordechai went out, the Levush Malchus Tcheles V'Geba, as it enumerates all the different types of special garments he left with coming from the king. So now, once we already mentioned the episode with Yosef and his brothers, and we talk about how Yosef gave Binyamin extra clothes. So now we mentioned something else from that episode. What does it say? Vayipol al tzavore Binyamin echal ochiv. Then he fell upon his brother Binyamin's neck. Now, tzavore sounds like a plural, the necks in the plural, right? So it says he fell on the necks of Binyamin and he cried, right? So Frank the Gemara, kama tzavar havule leBinyamin. How many necks did Binyamin have that you say tzavare? Amar Rabbi Elazar says it's teaching us, right, that Bacha al Shnei Mikdashim, that Yosef wept over the 2 Beis HaMikdash that were going to be in the portion of Binyamin. That were going to be in Binyamin's territory, and they were going to be destroyed. So that's why he was crying on. It says necks, savare, in the plural, to tell me that it's referring to the Beis HaMikdash. Now, how do we know that it's referring to the Beis HaMikdash? How do we know? So we know this because we say that Beis HaMikdash was in the highest place in the world. However, we're told that it's not the highest, it's slightly lower than the highest, because it says the strongest place, or the most, I guess the strongest place is the neck. So we want to go a little bit down, from the highest spot. So when it says that he cried on the neck refers to, it alludes to the place where the Beis HaMikdash was in Yerushalayim. So then it continues and says, Binyamin bacha al tzavarav, Binyamin wept on his neck. What does that mean? Bacha al mishkan Shilai. He wept over the Mishkan that was in Shilai, that was going to be in the territory of Yosef, and it was going to be destroyed. And that's why they cried. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe asks a very strong question on this. And he asks, look, Ira, why would I cry for your destruction of your Beis HaMikdash? Why don't I cry for my own? Right? In other words, if Yosef has his Beis HaMikdash that is going to be destroyed, his Mishkan is going to be destroyed, and Binyamin has the 2 Beis HaMikdash, that Batei Mikdash, that were going to be in his portion, that they were going to be destroyed, why don't they cry for their own destruction? Why do they cry for their friend's destruction? So the Rebbe explains a beautiful idea. He says, when do you cry? A person cries once they've done everything in their power to be able to prevent something from happening. But once they've done everything they can, then it comes to a point where there's nothing else they can do, and so they cry. So the Rebbe says, when a person's talking about somebody else's destruction, so you offer support and you do everything you can. But once you get to a point where there's nothing more that you can do, then you cry. But when it comes to your own destruction, things that are happening in your portion, things that are happening in your life, there's no time for you to cry. You've got to be active. What you have to do is you have to do everything in your power, and more than it's in your power, to be able to prevent that destruction. And that's why they cried for each other. The Rebbe goes on to say that we find by Yaakov that when he met up with Yosef, he didn't cry. He said the Shema. Because remember, Yaakov is the father. So whatever's in the chelik of Binyamin and whatever's in the chelik of Yosef, it's all in his chelik. It's all his. So therefore, there's no time to cry. You've got to be busy with Shema. You've got to be busy with doing everything in your power to avoid and alleviate any of the destruction. All right. So that's a nice interpretation of this idea of them falling on each other's necks and crying for each other's Beis Hamikdash and Mishkan that were going to be destroyed. Okay. Now the Gemara continues with the story. Behold, your eyes see as do the eyes of my brother Binyamin. So Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Amar Lahem, Yosef was telling his brothers, Kishem she'ein belibi al Binyamin achi, just like I have no resentment in my heart on my brother Binyamin, because he was not involved in my sale. So too, there's no resentment in my heart against you. And the verse continues, Kipi hamadaber aleichem, that is my mouth speaking to you. As it says, Kipi, just as it is my mouth, came believe me, so too it is in my heart. So it says in Parshas Vayeshev, right? I think it's Vayeshev, right? That it says that the brothers they couldn't speak peace to Yosef. So Rashi says, right? What does this mean? They couldn't speak. You could say whatever you want. Why can't you speak peace to somebody? So Rashi points out because what was in their mouth was the same thing that was in their heart, right? They weren't one in their mouth and one in their heart. Whatever they felt in their heart, that is what was in their mouth. So here you have Yosef telling them the same thing, that I'm not saying one thing with my mouth and something else in my heart, that whatever I'm telling you in the terms of me not having any resentment towards you, that's what I'm saying, and that's what I mean. That's how I feel. Then, when it comes time to parting with them and sending them off to Yaakov, so it says, and to his father, he said the following: 10 he-donkeys, laden with the best of Mitzrayim. So now, what was this thing that's Mituv Eretz Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim. What is the best of Egypt? So there's the Gemara, Amar Binyamin Bar Yafes, Amar Elazar, Shalach la yayin yashan. He sent with him aged wine because that was something that was special to Mitzrayim. Shedas kedim loichem, which pleases the elderly, that they enjoy this aged wine. Okay, so now, although we know that Yosef assured his brothers that he didn't hold a grudge against them, right? But Yaakov died, they were worried that who knows what's going to happen. Remember what happened with Uncle Esav, right? Esav said, when my father will die, then I'm going to kill Yaakov. So they didn't know, what's going to happen now that Yaakov is passed away. So what's going to be with Yosef? Will all of a sudden his resentment towards us be rekindled, and would he act in an improper manner towards us? So his brothers also went and flung themselves before him. Rabbi Yamin Bar Yafes says in the Limba Rabbi Elazar, this is what is meant when people say, when a fox has his hour, then bow to him. Now, this is a bit strange, right? Why we're using the term fox, but we're going to deal with that in a minute. But let's first understand what's being said over here. What's being said over here is that when you have someone who's like a fox, right? But he's being granted success. So then, irrespective of whether you consider him worthy or not, you have to show him respect because he's being successful. So the Gemara comes along and says, 1 second, Tala, was Yosef really compared to a fox in relation to his brothers? My mitziruse ba'achmei, what was his inferiority vis-a-vis his brothers? In other words, you should have called him a lion, right? The king of all, right? Because at the end of the day, why would he be considered to be inferior, right? That you're going to call him a fox who happens to have a stroke of luck or success. Why would Yosef be considered anything less than the rest of his brothers? And if he was elevated to be a ruler, then why compare him to a fox that's meaning success? Why not a lion? So the Gemara says, Ella, rather, we're going to have to amend it and understand it differently. It says, Vayishtachu Yisrael al Reish Hamita, that Yisrael, meaning Yaakov, prostrated himself towards the head of the bed. So this is before Yaakov died. And this idea of saying that even when a fox is successful, then you should give him honor, is not referring to Yosef and his brothers, that their brothers considered him to be a fox, but rather it's referring to an earlier instance where Yisrael came, meaning Yaakov came, and he prostrated himself towards the head of the bed where Yosef was. Amar Rabbi Yamin Bayefetz, Amar Rabbi Lazar. So in relation to that incident, that's when Rabbi Yamin Bayefetz said in the name of Rabbi Lazar, Talabi in the skidlay, when the fox has his hour bound to him, to say that although Yaakov was the father and Yosef was the son, but nevertheless, since he was meeting success, so Yaakov afforded him this honor. So now, when Yosef saw that his brothers were still afraid, he tried to reassure them, and he said, it says, he comforted them, and he spoke on their hearts. This teaches us, he said to them, words that resonate, that they're accepted by the heart. It's something that made sense to them. What did he say to them? So he said as follows: if you find that 10 candles were not able to extinguish one light, in other words, all 10 of you tried to scheme against me, and you wanted to cause me harm, and you weren't successful. Look, here I am, now the viceroy of Egypt, right? So so how could one light, me, Yosef, extinguish 10 lights, all of you? So you see, if you 10 brothers couldn't harm me, I can certainly not cause any harm to all 10 of you. Okay, so that's the end of that shtickle. Now, going back to the Megillah. It says in the Megillah, after we read how Mordechai came out with these special garments, it says,
Rabbi,
yes.
Rabbi, I don't see the Kal V'chomer so much there, because he was in a position that they were not in to be able to harm them.
At the time, if you think about it, at the time when they were together, conspiring to kill him, when he came, right? They first initially had the idea to kill him. And it was only Reuven, right, that stopped them by telling them to throw it into a pit. And then Yehuda, who tells them to sell him into slavery. That wasn't the initial the decision. That wasn't the initial counsel that they had. Initially, they wanted to kill him. Initially, the idea was to kill him. And nevertheless, that didn't come out. Now you can blame it on Reuven and you can blame it on Yehuda, but the real truth is it's because of Hashem. Hashem didn't want Yosef to die. So even though they initially had that idea, Hashem prevented it from materializing. So when they were in a position where they could have killed him, right? And yet Hashem saved him from them, right? And when they threw him into a pit, which really should have killed him because they had snakes and scorpions in it, which should have killed him, right? And it didn't. And then he sells them into slavery, which should have also landed him up possibly dead, right? It didn't succeed. So he's saying, even if I wanted to, and even though I'm in a position to, Hashem can turn things around in an instant and protect you. He protected me, he's going to protect you. In other words, he's saying, it wouldn't enter my mind to even try because I saw how your counsel didn't work, right? So certainly I wouldn't have, any thoughts of doing something bad to you, knowing that Hashem, that's not what Hashem wants.
Rabbi, question.
Yeah.
Couldn't he have also meant at that point in time when he's talking to them, they could still overpower him?
Possibly. I mean, when there was a
And so therefore he's saying, at this point in time, when we're all alone in this one room, what can I do to you?
right, but they weren't coming to him and asking him not to hurt them on his own. They were afraid that since he had at his disposal the whole army, the whole Egyptian army, and really the whole world, really, because at that time Mitzrayim was a superpower, right? So he was afraid what Yosef could decree against them, and they didn't want him to do anything bad to them. So he says to them, "I wouldn't be able to harm you, just as you were not able to harm me." I guess you could go even a little deeper. Just give me 1 second. Sorry. Yosef has already told them, right, that although you had a bad intention, but ultimately Hashem thought it for good, right? So I have seen firsthand how there's no power outside of Hashem. No one has the ability to impact you for good or for bad without it being the will of Hashem. So I've seen that firsthand. I saw how 10 of you had a bad intention to harm me, and I saw firsthand how it would not happen, right? So you being afraid that perhaps I am upset, I am in a bad mood, I am agitated, and therefore I might decide to take revenge. You have nothing to worry about because just like you couldn't enact something against me, I would never be able to enact something against you. Anyway, that's how I understand it. The idea of him not wanting, of him telling them that we're in one room, and so 10 people could overpower one person, it seems a little bit redundant because of two things. Number one, who says they were alone? And number two, he could always call on the whole army of Egypt to do something to them. So it seems more plausible to say that what he was saying is that if Hashem doesn't will it, it's not going to happen.
But he sent out all the Egyptians before he revealed himself to his brothers.
No.
So therefore he was alone in the room by himself. That's why I think the response here is that I am by myself. The 10 of you could still do to me what you originally had intended. But
right. See, you're conflating two stories. When he sent them out of the room, that was when he initially revealed himself. This episode that we're talking about is after the death of Yaakov. So then they came and they fell before him, and here it doesn't say that he sent anybody out. This is when they were begging him not to do anything. And you know what's interesting is that the one thing that they use in their defense is we still have the same God. We still have the same God, right? We still worship the God of your father. Anyway, I'm not sure. Let's go a little bit further. So we're talking about how the Jewish people reacted to Mordechai coming out with all this glory, with this honor, and Haman being hung. So it says, "La Yehudim Hoisa Oira Simcha Sasa Vikar." The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. Amar of Yehuda. Yehuda says as follows: Oira, when it says light, Zutayra, this refers to Torah. And similarly, it says in the pasuk, "The mitzvah of Torah are that the commandment is a lamp and the Torah is a light." Simcha is a Yom Tov. Gladness refers to the holiday, to Yom Tov, right? Like it says, you shall be glad on your holiday. So we see Simcha is associated with the Yom Tov. Sasa enjoys Zumila. This is a reference to circumcision. Similarly, it says in the pasuk, Sasa I rejoice over your word, which refers to Mila. And also we find by David HaMelech that the David HaMelech was in the shower in the bathhouse, and he felt naked from mitzvahs, and then he realized that he had a bris milah, and it says that he rejoiced, right? Vikar elu tefillin. The idea of honor refers to tefillin. As it says, "V'ro kol ami oretz k'shem Hashem nikra alecha v'yarim imeka." It says that all the nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you, and they will be in awe of you. The Tanya, it was taught in the Brisa, the great says, "Elu tefillin tibarayish." These are the tefillin that are in the head tefillin. So now, we know that the fear of Mordechai fell upon all the people. So we see that when it says, it refers to all these different things. Now, I don't remember where I saw this because I didn't see it today, but I've seen it in the past, that when it says this is telling me the different things that Haman had decreed against the Jewish people. And not only did he decree to annihilate them, but he made decrees that they should not be allowed to learn Torah, they should not be allowed to celebrate Shabbos and Yom Tov, they should not be allowed to perform circumcision, and they should not be able to wear tefillin. And so when Haman was hung, right, there was a special celebration for the Jewish people that all these decrees of Haman were nullified. Okay. Then there's an interesting story. There was a great tzaddik, and this great tzaddik, when people saw that he was wearing his tefillin, it caused them to almost be paralyzed. They couldn't do anything. They had such awe and such respect that they left the tzaddik alone. So somebody else asked this tzaddik, how come these people had such awe and such fear of you while you're wearing tefillin? So he quoted this Gemara, and he says, it says, they'll see that Hashem is called upon you, and they will be in awe of you. He says, this is the tefillin shebereish. So the guy says, but we see that so many other Jews, right, they're wearing tefillin, and people aren't necessarily afraid of them. To which the tzaddik responded, he says, look, you have to be medayik in the lashon. The lashon doesn't say elu tefillin shel rosh. It doesn't say these are the tefillin of the head, but shebereish, which are in the head, that are in the head. It's not just the putting on the tefillin, but it's your kavanah as well. It's what the tefillin represent. That is something that preoccupies your mind, so the tefillin are not just on your head, but they're also in your head, then that causes the awe among the nations of the people who see you. Okay, that's that. Says the Gemara Vaita, says that they hung all the children of Haman. It says the Eis Pashadosav Game Haman. That mentions all the names, the 10 sons of Haman. Says the Gemara halacha regarding this verse. Amar of Adam the Yafoi. Rav Adam Yafoi says Aseres bnei Haman the Aseres, the names of the 10 sons of Haman, and the word Aseres, which goes right after their names, Aseres bnei Haman, right? Sarich lemimrinu min shiva achas. You have to say it all with one in one breath. So we know that, when we hear the Megillah, the Balkera, one who's reading the Megillah, stops, Chamesh Me'os, and then before Chamesh Me'os, and then we all read Chamesh Me'os Ishves Pashal, and read all the names, right? And we read them all in one breath. Why do we read it? Why do we have to read it all in one breath? My timer. What's the reason? The reason is because they all died at the same moment. And that's why with the idea of neshama, right? The idea of breath being associated with the neshama, so we do it in one breath to tell us that their neshamas all departed in the same moment. They all died at the same time. Another ruling related to this portion. It says as follows. It says Vayizosa, right? The Vav, the Vayizosa, the letter Vav in the name Vayizosa, Tzarich lemimtcha b'skifa. It must be elongated. Kimerdaya delivrius, like a pole used by boatmen on the river Libros, right? That this is what they used. That this is something that they used, and so that's the way the Vav has to be in the name Vayizosa. My timer. What's the reason you should have a Vav written in that way? It says because Kula B'chad Skifa is the Kifu, because all of them were hung on one pole, one on top of the other. So therefore, we have this elongated Vav to be able to allude to this notion that they were all hung together on one tree. Okay. Amar Reb Chanina bar Papa. Reb Chanina bar Papa said, Dorash Reb Shela Ishkvar Tarbarta Kol Hashiris Kulon Nichtavois, all the songs of praise written in the Torah, right? Ariach al Gabe Levena. You have a half brick above a whole brick. Or Levena al Gabe Ariach, and a whole brick above a half brick. Chutz Mishirazu or Malchikran, except for this song of praise, which lists the 10 sons of Haman, and the song of praise listing the kings of Canaan. Okay, so this is in the book of Yeshua, right? Sha'ariach al gabi ariach or levena al gabi levena, which are written in the form of half a brick above a half a brick and a whole brick above a whole brick. So let me just share something with you. 1 second. Just to, okay, so I try to find an image, but if you look over here on the left-hand side, you see the Oz Yashir, right? So you have, right, the way there, the way it's written is you have a half a brick, like those spaces, on top of a whole brick. And what you see is that none of them are going to fall straight through, right? Because they're all held up by each other. Do you see how the different words are holding up the other words, right? So when that's the way we have it with regards to Oz Yoshir, for example. But 1 second. 1 second. If you see over here, right? If you see the Megilla over here, so in this one, sorry, you see over. Okay, I don't know what. You see over here. You have 2 columns, right? Right over here. You have 2 columns. So you see that there's nothing holding in the middle, right? Which means they can have a descent. They can fall straight down, right? That's the idea. There should be free fall. It should be free fall destruction for them. Okay, so that's what the Gemara is saying. My timer, what's the reason why by the Aseres B'nai Haman you have it where you have 2 columns, and why all the other shiras you have it in a way of a half a brick and a whole brick, etc. My timer, because it's telling us symbolically that there should never be a recovery from their downfall. They should have a free fall, and they should never be able to get up again. Okay. So then it goes on to say, with regards to the report that came back from the battle, the king said to Queen Esther, Shushan, the capital, the Jews have killed. Amar Babo says, the Lamed, this teaches us Sheba Malach Ustore Alpiv. This teaches us that an angel came and struck Achashverosh on the mouth so that he could not complete his tirade against the Jewish people. In other words, he starts off saying, right? B'shushan Habira Hargu HaYehudim, right? And he wanted to go on to say more negative things about the Jewish people. But then all of a sudden, what happened is he turns around to Esther and he says, "What else can I do for you?" The flow in the verse seems to be like
Interrupted.
Thank you. It's not what he intended to say, right? He starts with saying that the Jewish people killed so and so many Jews. That instead of asking her what else she wanted, he should have continued with this, talking about the destruction that the Jewish people had brought on these people. But he doesn't do that, and the reason is, says Rebavo, is because a Malach came along and struck him on the mouth so that he couldn't finish it, and instead he went off to say, "What else can I do?" Okay. After we recall how Haman placed the Jews in grave danger, so the Megillah continues. It says, "Ubevaya lifnei hamelech amar b'sefer," and when Esther appeared before the king, he said with a letter, right? So now, this idea Amar in Sefer doesn't really make sense grammatically. Amar, why did it say Amar? Amra bin Boile. We're talking about Esther over here, seemingly. So why did it say Amra? She should have said that she said. Amr Rabbi Yochanan says Amra loi. She said that the Megillah should be recited from what's written in the scroll. This means to say that the Megillah, right? This is a halacha that when you read the Megillah, you have to read it while looking inside, right? You shouldn't read it by heart. So when it says Amar in Sefer, this is written in this form to tell us that a law regarding the mitzvah of reading the Megillah, that it should be read in the scroll. Okay, 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. Let's go for this. There's a long Rashi about the Arki Garcinan, how the Girsah. We're going to leave that for now. Says the Gemara as follows. We're told that they sent the Megillah tells us that they sent people to all of the Jewish people containing with a letter containing divrei shalom ve'emes, words of peace and truth. Amar of Tankum v'amrillah. Amar Rab Asi. Tankum says it on say was Rab Asi. This teaches that the Megillah scrolls require etched lines on the parchment like an actual Torah. So we're saying that when this Megillah is written, it should be written like the words of the emes, which means referring to Torah, right? We say ein emes ala Torah, that when we refer to something as truth, we're referring to Torah. So when it says divrei shalom emes, this is alluding to halacha that when you write a Megillah, it should be written with these etched lines, just like a Sefer Torah is written. Now it goes on to say, Esther Kiyam, Esther's words validated these regulations for Purim. Frank the Gemara, Maimer Esther Ein Divrei Hatzemus like. Did Esther's words alone contribute to the miracle and not the matters of the fast mentioned in the previous verse? And for the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, no, you should. I understand it as follows: Divrei Hatzemus Uma'amar Esther. Is both of them together. Kiyam, Esimei, Divrei HaPurim, Aila, they were validated these regulations for Purim, meaning there was a combination of both of these things that caused the miracle of Purim. Then the Gemara concludes as follows. It says, Ki Mordechai HaYehudi Mishneh LeMelech HaChashverosh. Mordechai HaYehudi was a viceroy to King Achashverosh, V'godel HaYehudim, and he was great among the Jews. V'rotzu L'Riv Echov, and he was popular with Rive, means the multitude of his brothers. Says the Gemara, the Rive Echov, the Loy Kol Echov. So the multitude, meaning to most, to many, but not all. Malamed teaches us Sanhedrin that a number of the members of the Sanhedrin parted from him, and the reason for this, as we explained before, is because instead of going back to being part of the Sanhedrin and being involved in learning, as opposed to being involved in politics, he remained in politics. He remained a viceroy of the king and was involved in the matters of the government. Amar Rav Yosef says, from here we see that what Gadol Talmud Torah Yosef Matzal Nefashos, the study of Torah is greater than saving lives. The Mikara Chashiv Leila Mordechai Basa Dalet. Initially, Mordechai is reckoned in the psukim after 4 sages, but in the end, after the story of Purim taking place, Mordechai is mentioned as number 5, as we see over here in the pasuk. In the beginning, it's written when we enumerate in a verse which different great people. So we mention Ashebo in Zerubbabel, who came with Zerubbabel, and that mentions Yeshua, Nehemiah, Sroya, Ra'alia, or Mordechai. So you have Mordechai as number 5. All of the Saif, Aboim, Ibn Zerubbabel, Yeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Rabia, Nachmani, Mordechai, Belshan. Then you have Mordechai mentioned as at a later number 6 after all the others, because this was written in a stage after the story of Purim. So what we see is he is in a way demoted, right? First, he was mentioned earlier in the pasuk, and usually, if there's no other explanation, when people are enumerated in a certain manner in a pasuk, is to tell us that one is greater than the other. So first, he was mentioned at a certain point, and then later on, when he's mentioned in a verse, he's counted later on, which means that he lost a little bit of that chashivus, which teaches us how great Talmud Torah is, despite the fact that Mordechai, you would think, should get more accolades because he saved the Jewish people with between him and Esther. They saved the Jewish people. Nevertheless, because it took away from the Talmud Torah, it shows that Talmud Torah is even greater.
Rabbi,
yes. Yeah.
Doesn't the fact that there are other names that were not included in the first list and now appear in the second list indicates that he even was demoted even further because other people jumped before him, his name, and even though he appears number 5, in reality, it was probably even more.
I'm not. I tend to agree, but I'm saying, okay, I fair enough. It's a fair comment. It's a fair comment. Fair observation. The point here is we're underscoring how important it is to learn Torah, that even though Mordechai was engaged in something as important as saving the Jewish people, and the fact that it came with the custom of studying Torah caused him to be demoted to the degree. So we can discuss the degree, and other people were pushed before him in Achanami, but it's because they were engaged in Torah study, and he was engaged a little less because of his need to be involved in the political affairs of the government.
Rabbi,
yeah,
I know we're over time, but one last thing in the Steinsaltz, it quotes the Rishon LeZion.
Yeah.
It says the Gemara is not indicating that saving lives is less important than studying Torah. Rather, since Mordechai had already saved the Jews, a number of sages were angry with him for continuing to be involved in affairs of state with the intention of preventing further danger to Jews. As in this regard, the study of Torah should have taken precedence.
Right. But at the same time, right? At the same time, we have to remember, and I mentioned this last time when we had this idea raised in the Gemara, that we find that Achashverosh was the same wicked Achashverosh from the beginning to the end, right? From the beginning to the end, he was saying wicked Achashverosh, which is why Mordechai had to stay there, right? Had to stay involved even after the miracle of Purim, because at the end of the day, if he would have moved away, then things could have taken a turn for the worse, because Achashverosh was unpredictable.
So based on that, So based on that, the sages should not have been upset with him. They should have, like you're saying.
Right, but at the end of the day, people only appreciate what you do when it's a crisis. But when everything's going smooth, they don't attribute it to you. You know the picture of the guy coming home and he sees everything laid out all over the lawn, and the water's running and the kids are running around without clothes, and the whole house is a balagan. So he comes up and he sees his wife lying there in a bed reading a magazine. She's like, what's going on? She says, you know how you always ask me what I do all day? Well, today I didn't do it, right? So, al derech zeh, people only appreciate what you do when all of a sudden there's a crisis, and all of a sudden they can actually see how you actually make a difference. But when everything's running smoothly, which was because of Mordechai, it was hard to be able to attribute it to Mordechai because he didn't see the crisis and he didn't see the fires that he was putting out. So that's what. Anyway,
Thank you, Rabbi.
A good Shabbos, and
Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks a lot.
Shabbos,
Thank you,
everybody.
Rabbi. We'll see you.
Everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.